Okay, we need to talk about one of the most powerful and honestly, one of the most controversial technologies on the entire planet. We're talking about something that could fundamentally rewrite the code of the natural world. This is the story of gene drives. But let's start with a question. Just imagine for a second. What if we could completely eliminate diseases like malaria or dengue or Zika? Diseases that kill hundreds of thousands of people every single year. And what if we could do it not with a vaccine, but by re engineering the very creatures that carry them? Now, this might sound like total science fiction, but it's not. A truly revolutionary genetic technology is turning that exact question from some distant dream into a very real and very near possibility. But, and you knew there was a but coming, there is a massive catch. The very same tool that could save millions of lives also has the power to permanently alter, maybe even erase entire species, with consequences we just can't fully predict. All right, so how does this incredible technology actually work? To really get a handle on the promise and the peril, we've got to look under the hood at the genetic engine that makes it all possible. So the core idea is called a gene drive. You can think of it like a selfish gene on steroids. Normally, right, when two animals reproduce, any gene has a 50-50 shot of being passed on to the kids. But a gene drive completely hijacks that process. It forces a specific trait to be inherited by almost all offspring, every single time. It literally cheats the rules of genetics. And this image shows you exactly what I mean. Look at the left side. That's normal inheritance. See how that modified gene, the red one, kind of gets diluted over time? It spreads, but slowly. Now look at the right. That's the gene drive. The red trait just explodes through the population, becoming dominant in just a handful of generations. It's the speed and the unstoppable nature of it that's so incredible. You know, the craziest part is that the key to all of this wasn't invented from scratch, it was discovered. Turns out, scientists studying bacteria found this amazing natural defense system called CRISPR. Back in '93, a researcher named Francisco Mojica noticed these weird repeating bits of DNA. Then, by 2005, they found the Cas9 protein, the molecular scissors of the system. And just a couple years later, they confirmed it. CRISPR is how bacteria have been fighting off viruses for eons. So how do you turn this bacterial immune system into a gene drive? Well, it's this really elegant three-step process. First, a little molecule called a guide RNA acts like a GPS, finding the exact spot in the DNA you want to change. Second, the Cas9 protein comes in and acts like scissors, making a clean cut. And third, and this is the genius part, the cell's own repair crew is tricked into pasting in a new piece of DNA, which of course just happens to contain the instructions for the entire gene drive system. Find, cut, copy. It's that simple. So with this incredible tool, scientists can now edit the code of life with a precision and power we've never had before. And, as you can imagine, the potential applications are, well, they're simply staggering. Okay, let's start with public health. The number one target here is malaria. In this absolutely groundbreaking lab study, scientists created a gene drive in mosquitoes that messes with a gene that's crucial for females to develop. And the result? The entire cage population completely collapsed. Gone. In just 7 to 11 generations. Think about that. Taking that technology from the lab to the wild could be one of the greatest public health victories in all of human history. And it's not just about us. Gene drives could totally revolutionize conservation. I mean, on so many remote islands, invasive species like rats just decimate native bird populations. Instead of dumping tons of poison everywhere, what if you could release a gene drive that only targets the invasive rats? Well, groups like the GBIRD Consortium are working on that exact thing right now. And looking even further ahead, some scientists think we might even be able to engineer coral reefs to be more resilient to warming oceans. And then, of course, there's agriculture. Imagine being able to control horrible pests like the fruit flies that ruin crops without having to spray fields with broad-spectrum pesticides. You could even, theoretically, use a gene drive to make superweeds susceptible to herbicides again. It could make our whole food system so much more sustainable. So the promise here is just immense. But you talk to any scientist in this field and they will tell you that the potential for unintended and totally irreversible consequences is just as large. So what exactly could go wrong? Well, researchers have kind of broken down the risks into 3 main levels. First, at the molecular level, you're worried about the code itself. What if the edit isn't perfect? Then at the population level, you worry about it spreading. What if it jumps to the wrong species? And finally, at the ecosystem level, you worry about the domino effect.
What happens when you just pull one piece out of a really complex natural puzzle? Let's break those down.
So, at the tiniest level, the molecular level, the biggest fear is just simple error. Those CRISPR scissors might make what they call off-target cuts, snipping the wrong part of the DNA and causing who knows what kind of mutations. And you have to remember, nature always fights back. The target species could evolve resistance, developing a natural mutation that just blocks the gene drive, making the whole thing useless. Move up a level to the whole population, and the big risk is something called spillover. So, let's say you release a gene drive to wipe out an invasive mosquito. But what if that mosquito can, interbreed with a native, totally harmless mosquito species? Well, that gene drive could jump species, and you could accidentally wipe out a creature you never ever meant to harm. And then you get to the ecosystem level. And this is where things get really, really complicated. When you remove one species, it can cause these totally unpredictable chain reactions. There was a real-world case where scientists got rid of feral pigs on an island to help the native plants. But it turned out the pigs were eating this invasive vine. Once the pigs were gone, the vine just exploded and choked out everything else. What happens when we remove a mosquito? We don't always know what's going to rush in to fill that empty space. So, we have this world-changing technology with unbelievable potential for good and for disaster, which leads us to the final and maybe the hardest question of all. How in the world do we control it? This gets us to the core dilemma. See, scientists can design what are called global drives, the kind that are meant to spread forever through an entire species all across the world. But they're also working on limited drives, which are designed to be contained to one area or even to just fizzle out on their own after a few generations. And that choice between a permanent global change and a local temporary one is a monumental one to make. And what if we mess up? Can we put the genie back in the bottle? People are working on it. They're designing countermeasures, like a reversal drive that could hunt down the first one and overwrite it. But here's the scary part. When you run the computer models, they show that in the messy, complicated reality of a real ecosystem, these fixes aren't guaranteed to work, not even close. Because the stakes are so high, the scientific community has basically agreed on a very careful, very slow, step-by-step approach for any potential release. It would start with years of research in a secure lab, then move to big, contained cages out in the field. After that, maybe a super monitored trial in an isolated place like an island, before anyone would even think about a larger rollout. Which brings us right back to the ultimate question. This technology offers us the power to solve some of humanity's oldest, most painful problems, and maybe even heal some of the damage we've done to the planet. But it also comes with risks that are permanent and global. The science is moving at lightning speed. The real question is, can our wisdom keep up?